Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this English lesson where I'm going to be talking about some funny sounding verbs. Verbs that, to me, sound funny when I say them. So I'll help you learn how to pronounce those English verbs, but I'll also, of course, give you the definition of that verb, give you its meaning, and I'll try to use it in a few example sentences as I talk about each of them. If you're wondering what kind of verbs sound funny, they usually have a double letter in them, like two B's or two G's, or I'm just looking over at my list. So there's one that I didn't put on the list because I realized it has a bad meaning, but maybe I'll talk about that one in a private video at some point in time. But today, welcome to this English lesson about funny sounding verbs. I think you will enjoy it. To squabble. To squabble. I'm going to try and make sure I say each of these twice. When you squabble, it means you kind of have like a meaningless argument. We actually have the term family squabble when like people in a family don't get along. Maybe one older brother, like not necessarily children, like adults. So maybe you're in your 40s and you're just always squabbling with your sister. There's a family squabble. I don't know what makes this verb qualify for the list, but for some reason, the verb squabble sounds funny to my ears. So you can see here, they're having a squabble. Maybe they're going on a trip, and maybe there's an argument about who gets to sit where in the vehicle. And so they're having a little squabble before they hit the road. Thankfully, when I was visiting Brent, we didn't have any squabbles. Brent and I got along quite well. So it was a fun trip last week. To dabble. When you dabble in something, it means you try it a little bit. So maybe this guy in the really nice green shirt, if I was to switch shirt colors from blue, I might switch to green. He might dabble in painting. If you like pickleball is very popular here in Canada now, you might dabble in that a little bit. It means to try something a little bit. So you might say to someone, "What are your hobbies?" And you could respond and say, "Oh, I dabble in a little bit of painting and those kinds of things." Or maybe you dabble in collecting old records or something like that. So to dabble means to do something a little bit, usually a hobby. To slurp. To slurp. Sorry, I should stop laughing. They're just words, Bob. Why are you laughing about the words? When you slurp, and I'm going to do a slurp. This used to annoy people when I first started doing live streams. I would drink water and I would slurp. So that sound, which bothers some people, is to slurp. So if this person is eating soup, they might slurp, like they might slurp their soup as they eat. And you just heard me as I had a sip of water. You could hear me slurp the water in as I did that. Hopefully that didn't bother too many people. So if you're wondering where the idea for this lesson came from, there were two sources. One was the fact that my name, Bob, is also a verb. When you throw something in the water, like an empty water bottle, it will bob in the water. When something bobs in the water, it goes up and down. It will bob up and down. So as the waves kind of move, the water bottle will bob up and down. If you know what a buoy is, sometimes they put a buoy out in a harbor or bay to warn ships about rocks, and it will bob in the water. It will kind of go up and down. So my name is also a verb, and it means to kind of go up and down in the water, to bob. So that was the first source of why I made this lesson. I'll tell you the next one when I get there. To warble. So this is where I have to try and make a sound effect. This is the sound that a bird will make, like I will never become what would you call it, a bird impressionist? No. But when you hear a bird like kind of singing, like it's kind of a warble. When a bird warbles, that is the sound that you would hear. You can hear the birds warbling in the trees. sometimes when I do a live stream outside, you will hear birds chirping and warbling. Slightly different sound, kind of hard to explain. Should I try? A chirp would be like cheep, 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 cheep. And a warble would be like more like I think a pigeon warbles a little bit. Anyways, fun verb to say and fun verb to hear. To giggle. So not exactly a funny verb to say out loud, to giggle, but it does kind of sound funny. It's like a little laugh, right? Like if I'm like, ha, 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 that's a real laugh. But if I'm like, that would be, sorry. When I giggled at my fake giggle, that was a real giggle. Does that make sense? So like, and then right after that, I actually giggled at myself because it sounded kind of funny the way I was saying it. But to giggle is to like just a small laugh, usually about something silly. To splurge. To splurge. When you splurge, it means you spend a lot of money. If you watched Brent's video where we went and got lobster rolls, or my video where we went and got lobster rolls, Brent splurged. Those lobster rolls were $30 each. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Brent from American English with Brent and myself, I went to visit Brent. Brent took me out to eat some food from around Maine, and he treated me to a lobster roll, but he splurged because I don't think he normally takes his family there. When you splurge, you spend way more money than maybe you should. Like these people went shopping and they decided to splurge. Maybe they were going to spend $300. It looks like they spent like $700. So when you splurge, it means you spend a lot. If you're buying a gift for someone you love, you should usually splurge a little bit, like spend more than what you were originally planning to spend. To hobnob. When you hobnob with people, it usually means you're talking with other people, sometimes people who are like in a position above you. Like if I'm at a work party and I'm always talking with my boss, I'm kind of hobnobbing with my boss. Maybe I'm trying to get a raise or a promotion. When you hobnob, it means you talk. It means you hang out with usually people who you're trying to impress a little bit. Like if I went to a party for YouTubers and there were some like A-list actors there, I might try to hobnob with them a little bit. I might try to talk to Matt Damon and try to hang out with him. So to hobnob, great word to say, to hobnob. To doodle. So to doodle. So the second idea for this lesson came from, I think Brent might have done a short or a lesson where he talked about doodle and poodle and I forget, Brent, you can mention some of them. And then I thought when I watched that, doodle sounds funny when you say it. When you do, so thanks for part of the idea, Brent. To doodle. When you doodle, it means you draw little pictures. Students will often doodle on a piece of paper if they're a little bit bored in class. Sometimes they're supposed to be taking notes and listening to the teachers, but instead they will just doodle. They'll draw little pictures of Superman or like little stars in boxes, or this person was drawing clouds and I think little buildings down here. So to doodle, it's not where you draw in color. It's not art, but it's like just little pencil or pen drawings in your notebook that you draw usually when you're bored. Students often doodle when they are bored. To doodle. To zigzag. So if you don't know what zigzag means, it means kind of to go back and forth. I can zigzag down the road in my car. I shouldn't, but I can zigzag through traffic. I didn't do that while I was driving through New York State. You can also use it to describe this road. Like this road zigzags up the mountain. It goes back and forth up the mountain. It zigzags up the slope. Yes. So what's funny is in English, we often say that you zigzag back and forth. The car was zigzagging back and forth down the road. You don't actually need to say both. If you say zigzag, it already means to go back and forth. But yes, to zigzag means to go back and forth. To lollygag. So I like saying this one, to lollygag. This is a word that, speaking about how common or uncommon these words are very common, this entire list. There are a few that are a little less common. This one may be a little less common, but teachers do use this sometimes. When the bell goes and students are supposed to be going to class, and if they're just sitting around on their phones, we might say, hey, stop lollygagging, or hey, this isn't the time to lollygag, go to class. So it might be common in the teacher world. I use this word. But yes, to lollygag, which means to sit around and kind of not move along and do what you're supposed to do. Students sometimes lollygag a lot. They like to wait till the last minute to go to class. So they like to, again, lollygag would be to sit and do nothing when you're supposed to be going somewhere. That's how I would describe it. To bamboozle. So when you bamboozle someone, it means to trick them or cheat them. This has never actually happened to me. I've been to some large cities in the world, mostly in Canada and the United States. No one has tried to sell me a watch, but sometimes they are trying to bamboozle you. They're trying to sell you a watch that looks like a very expensive watch, but it's actually a fake. So when you bamboozle someone, it usually involves money in some way, and you've tricked them into giving you more money, or you've tricked them into buying something that they think is a Rolex, but it's not actually a Rolex. So to bamboozle means to trick someone. To canoodle. This is a little difficult to explain. One definition of to canoodle is to kiss and embrace and caress in a romantic way. Maybe I'll leave the definition there. When two people canoodle, they obviously really like each other. And I found this nice cartoon image to kind of give you a sense of it. But isn't it a funny word, canoodle? When I looked up the meaning, it said it's a mixture of the word canoe and paddle, because in like hundreds of years ago, when two people wanted to make out, for lack of a better word, they might use a canoe to paddle to the middle of the lake for privacy. But to canoodle, to embrace, to caress, to kiss, those kinds of things. To blubber. So I do like this word, to blubber. Sometimes when a child cries, they're kind of like their lips kind of move, and they're crying and they're blubbering. So they're not speaking and they're crying, but they're also kind of making a funny sound when they're crying. You can also have it where like an adult might blubber, especially someone maybe who's intoxicated. When they talk, they might blubber and it's hard to understand them. Sorry, there's something, I think a little spider coming down from the ceiling. But to blubber, I can't do a very good sound effect, but it would kind of be like, that wasn't good. That was a bad example. I'll have to go back to sound effects school to learn how to do that one. To skedaddle. When you skedaddle, it means you leave. And this is a word we sometimes use just to sound funny. Like if I'm talking to teachers after school and I need to go home, I might say, well, I need to skedaddle. I'll see you guys tomorrow. When you're out with friends and then it's 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, one of your friends might say, whoa, it's 11 o'clock. See you guys tomorrow. I need to skedaddle. So it simply means to leave. And it's a fun word to say. Like sometimes you just say it because it is fun and to sound funny. So you'll say, well, I need to go. I need to skedaddle. Isn't that fun? Skedaddle. I think that's one of my favorites. Lollygag and skedaddle, probably. To schmooze. To schmooze. Got that? That is hard to say probably for some of you. Schmooze. To schmooze. When you schmooze with someone, you talk to them and you want to impress them. Sometimes people will schmooze with the boss. Again, kind of similar to, what was the last one? Hobnob? Maybe a little different. Schmooze is usually just when you talk to one person. Like you can hobnob with a whole bunch of people, but sometimes you might schmooze with your boss because you want to raise. So it means to talk in a very positive way, to give them lots of compliments. Hey, boss, your new haircut looks great today. Can I have a raise? Can I have a promotion? So to schmooze, to talk in a very positive, nice way, usually with someone who is above you. Sometimes students will try to schmooze with the teacher a bit to get a better grade, so they're trying to work the system a bit to get a better grade in class. Squeegee. So that tool is called a squeegee, and we use the same verb to talk about using it, to squeegee. So when you squeegee a window, you make it wet, and then you have this tool. It's like a rubber strip, and then you squeegee the window. When I fill my van with gas at gas stations in Canada, they usually have a brush, or it's like a brush on one side and a squeegee on the other. And then you can wash your windows and then squeegee the window off. So a verb meant to talk about what the tool with the same name does. When you squeegee something, you use a squeegee. I remember as a kid in the barn, we had a squeegee. We would squeegee the floor after we washed the area where we stored the milk. To squeegee. To jiggle. To jiggle. Have you ever had Jello or gelatin? So it is something, if you shake the bowl, the pieces will keep moving. They'll jiggle in the bowl. So if you shake it, it will jiggle. I was going to say, when I was a lot heavier, when I ran, my belly would jiggle. That's a little embarrassing. Thankfully, I'm a little thinner now, but there was a time where I was a little bit bigger and my belly would jiggle. Sometimes you jiggle when you're trying to open something, and if the key won't turn, you'll jiggle the key a little bit. We'll use the verb for that as well. But if you haven't had this Jello, it definitely jiggles. It wiggles and jiggles. To gargle. If you use mouthwash, so I usually floss my teeth and brush my teeth, and sometimes I use mouthwash. You take a sip and then you gargle. I was going to do this live. Now I'm worried this is going to end horribly. So here we go. Let me try that again. Oh, excuse me. Hopefully you could hear that. Hopefully you didn't hear me. I burped at the end. Sorry. It's a funny verb too. Now I want to listen to myself. Sorry. To gargle. When you put a little bit of water, or usually mouthwash, and you put it at the back of your mouth, top of your throat, and then I think you kind of blow air out, right? And then you gargle. You make bubbles in it. So to gargle. If you want fresh breath, you get mouthwash and you gargle, and then you spit out the mouthwash. To snicker. So this is, again, something students often do. Sometimes when you're teaching, some students at the back might snicker. It means they're laughing at you, sort of, or they might be laughing about something else. They're definitely laughing. When you're trying to teach and students at the back are snickering when they decide to snicker, it can be very distracting because you don't know what they're laughing about. I, as a student, was often guilty of this. When you are guilty of something, it means that you have done it yourself. I was the type of student who would sometimes snicker at the back of the classroom. my friends and I would whisper little jokes, and we would snicker. It probably wasn't very nice for teachers to have me as a student. I was probably a little bit distracting for them. To quibble. So when you quibble, it means you argue a little bit, but usually about the price of something. Like you might quibble over the price. I know we raised the price on our bouquets this year because everything's more expensive. So it's more expensive to grow flowers. So we have to sell them for more. And some people wanted to kind of quibble over the price at first. They were like, oh, these were only $10 last year and now they're 15 or something like that. And we decided not to quibble over the price. The price is the price. To bonk. Sometimes you bonk your head. So I do it when, okay, so if I'm trying to, this is my van. If I open the hatch on the van, so the back of my van, I open the hatch. And then this part is like, it's just above my eye, but still, and I sometimes I bonk my head on it. I walk too fast around the back of the van and I bonk my head. So to bonk, funny sounding, to bonk means to hit your head. Sometimes if you're really tall, you might bonk your head when you go through a doorway. That can happen as well. And then the verb, yeah, I'll let that one be. There is another verb that looks like this that means something different and sounds different. And I'm not going to talk about it. I'll just keep moving on. To fizzle. So the best example actually is if you light a firecracker and the wick is burning and then all of a sudden it stops, we would say that it fizzled out. So it kind of becomes a phrasal verb. But to fizzle means to go down. So let's say we were selling 10 bouquets an hour at market, and then all of a sudden things started to fizzle and we were selling 1 bouquet an hour. Or let's say a car salesman is selling 10 cars a week, and then all of a sudden things start to fizzle just in the past week. It means that they're going down. So you can see the graph. So sales can fizzle out. That's not fun when sales fizzle out. It's nice when sales are good and strong. To waffle. When you waffle, it means you have trouble making a decision. So let's say Jen and I were planning to go see a movie. And then Jen was like, I'm not sure if I want to go. Maybe I'd like to go shopping instead. And if I said, you know, I really want to go. So we would say that Jen has started to waffle. So sometimes people will waffle. They'll have trouble making a decision. So they'll kind of say one thing and then they'll want to do something else. It's bad to give Jen as an example. Jen doesn't waffle very often on a decision. So